The idea of the millionaire pretending to be blind begins with the intention to strip away all the illusions that come with wealth and privilege. This man, perhaps in his late 50s or early 60s, has lived a life where people have treated him according to the size of his bank account rather than the depth of his humanity. Over the years, he has seen employees flatter him for raises, acquaintances cling to him for financial favors, and even some family members shift their tone depending on whether they needed something from him. He has grown wary of smiling faces that mask selfish agendas. For him, trust is the rarest currency. When he decides to hire a new nanny, not for a child, but to help care for his young nephew or perhaps even himself after a fabricated accident, he knows that the role requires more than skill. It demands compassion, patience, and a natural inclination to care for someone who is vulnerable. He realizes there is no better way to find that out than to make himself appear vulnerable in the most intimate way possible, by pretending to have lost his sight. The plan is carefully constructed. He spreads the word through an agency that he has recently suffered a debilitating eye injury and is now blind. The profile the agency shares paints him as a man struggling to adjust, needing assistance with basic tasks, and relying on this new hire to help him navigate daily life. This pretense does more than set the stage, it becomes a filter. Many applicants will see blind millionaire and sense either an easy paycheck or an opportunity to manipulate. Others will avoid the job entirely, unwilling to deal with the perceived inconvenience. But the one who accepts, that's the person he wants to observe closely. The millionaire knows the performance must be flawless. He studies how blind individuals move, how they use their hearing to compensate, how their eyes may drift or remain fixed, and how they handle common tasks without sight. He practices counting his steps from room to room, subtly feeling for objects with his hands, and hesitating just enough when reaching for items to make it believable. Every detail matters because the nanny will be in close proximity at all hours. Even a small slip could unravel the test. The reason behind the test runs deeper than simple curiosity. In his heart, he is tired of being valued for what he can give rather than who he is. Blindness, real or feigned, forces the people around you to interact with you on a more human level. When you can't see someone, you rely on their words, tone, and actions to reveal who they are. Likewise, when someone believes you can't see them, they might let their guard down, showing their truest behaviors. If the nanny thinks he is blind, she might reveal kindness without expectation of reward, or cruelty she believes will go unnoticed. When he meets the black nanny for the first time, he is deliberately cautious in tone and manner. He doesn't extend his hand first but waits to see if she will guide him, perhaps offering a handshake or a gentle arm touch to help him find his seat. He listens to her voice, the pauses between her sentences, the warmth, or lack thereof, behind her words. Does she address him directly, or does she speak about him in the third person to someone else in the room, as if he's not capable of understanding? Every small action becomes a data point in his private experiment. The racial element, though not his primary concern, is part of the test's unspoken dynamics. In the world he lives in, he has seen people make assumptions based on skin color, and he wonders if this nanny has faced such prejudice. If she has, perhaps she has cultivated extra patience and empathy from personal hardship. Or perhaps she has grown guarded, unwilling to extend kindness unless it's earned. He doesn't know yet, and that's part of what he hopes to learn. His curiosity isn't rooted in malice, it's an exploration of character under unusual conditions. From the first day, the millionaire notes everything. How she greets him in the morning. Whether she remembers to describe where she places his cup of coffee or silently sets it down and walks away. How she reacts when he fumbles, accidentally, and spills water on the floor. Does she sigh in irritation, mutter under her breath, or reassure him gently while cleaning it up? These moments are orchestrated with precision. Each accident is meant to expose the raw edges of her patience. But this is not a cold experiment for him. Though he tells himself it's a test, he feels the sting of each unkind action and the warmth of each kind one. When she laughs, not mockingly, but in a way that invites him to laugh at his own staged clumsiness, he finds himself genuinely smiling. When she speaks to him while guiding his hand to the right drawer, describing the placement of utensils so he can remember, he feels a tug of gratitude despite knowing he doesn't truly need the help. And when she sits quietly in the same room while he pretends to nap, humming softly to herself, he catches glimpses of her inner calm. The challenge for the millionaire is to remain in character. There are moments when he wants to look her in the eye and thank her directly for her patience. There are times when he is tempted to expose his sight just to watch her reaction in real time. But he knows that to break the ruse too early would destroy the purity of the results. The longer the act continues, the more authentic her behavior will be, because she will stop performing and start being herself. His idea of the moral test extends beyond kindness in the obvious sense. He watches for signs of opportunism. If he leaves cash on the counter, does it remain untouched? If he forgets where he placed an expensive watch, does she help him find it or quietly slip it away? He never plants temptations recklessly. Each one is calculated to seem natural, the kind of scenario a caregiver might encounter without thinking she's being observed. He wants to know whether her sense of morality is intact when she believes no one is watching. As days turn into weeks, the millionaire reflects on the subtler discoveries this act has revealed, not only about her, but about himself. Living as a blind man has slowed him down. He moves through his home differently, listening to sounds he had ignored for years. The distant hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of a wall clock, the way footsteps sound on hardwood versus carpet. This heightened awareness extends to his interactions with the nanny. He notices her pauses before answering questions, the soft exhale she makes after climbing the stairs, the quiet pride in her voice when she accomplishes something small for him, like organizing the pantry so he can find things more easily. In this extended observation, he realizes that her care is not purely mechanical. She doesn't simply perform tasks, she engages with him as a person. She asks about his childhood. She listens to his stories, even the ones he repeats for the sake of staying in character as a forgetful, struggling man. She laughs at his jokes and offers her own. These exchanges become moments of connection that almost make him forget why he began this charade. But he keeps reminding himself, people can be kind at first, and only later reveal self-interest. The test must run its course. The tension in his mind grows as he tries to reconcile two possibilities. Either she is genuinely compassionate and will pass this unspoken test with flying colors, or she has mastered the art of appearing caring for the sake of keeping her job. This is the central challenge of his plan. People can act for extended periods when there's money on the line. But can they fake empathy when they believe no one is watching closely? His advantage, as he sees it, is that she thinks he can't watch her at all. In those moments when she's in the kitchen and he's sitting blind in the living room, her unguarded behaviors speak volumes. Sometimes, he hears her singing softly while doing chores. Sometimes, she sighs and mutters about being tired, but never in a way that feels resentful toward him. On one occasion, she answers a phone call in the other room and speaks warmly to what sounds like a younger family member, telling them she's fine and not to worry about her. He catches a note of pride in her voice when she says she's working for a good man. That phrase lingers with him. Is it the truth as she sees it, or is it simply what she tells people to keep her job secure? By the middle of the test, the millionaire has reached a point where he almost dreads the day he'll have to reveal the truth. His goal was to assess her moral character, but in doing so, he has built a relationship on a false foundation. There's a growing awareness that when he does tell her he can see, her reaction will not just be about the lie, it will be about the betrayal of trust. Yet, he reminds himself, the entire point of the plan is to see if she can be trusted without conditions. If she proves herself through these weeks of supposed blindness, then perhaps she will forgive the deception. And so, the moral test and hidden truth becomes more than a strategy to measure someone else's virtue. It turns into a mirror for the millionaire himself. In pretending to be blind, he forces the nanny into a position where her humanity, or lack thereof, will surface without her realizing it. But he also confronts his own humanity, seeing the world in a slower, quieter, and more vulnerable way. It is not just her compassion on trial, it is his capacity to live with the consequences of his own deception. This realization, though unspoken, hangs in the background as he continues his role, waiting for the right moment to end the test and face whatever truth comes next. The emotional turning point in this story is the moment when the layers of pretense fall away, and both the millionaire and the nanny are exposed in their rawest forms. It is the pivot that transforms the narrative from a quiet, observational test into a confrontation between truth and trust. Until this point, the millionaire has been the silent puppeteer, controlling the scenario with careful lies, small staged mishaps, and orchestrated temptations, all while maintaining the illusion of helplessness. He has been confident in his ability to read the nanny's behavior, to interpret every tone in her voice, every pause in her speech, every choice she makes when she believes no one can see her. But what he has underestimated is how deeply the act has entangled him emotionally. By pretending to be blind, he has lived in a way that strips him of his habitual authority and forces him to depend on her in ways that feel uncomfortably real, even if the dependence is fabricated. The turning point is not a single instant of revelation, but a buildup of emotional pressure from both sides. For the millionaire, this pressure comes from the accumulation of her care, real or perceived, over time. He remembers the way she guides his arm without making it feel like pity. He recalls the mornings she quietly sets his coffee beside him, describing its position on the table so that he can find it, even when she could have simply placed it and walked away. He notes how she adjusts her voice when she senses he is tired, softening her tone, or how she describes the day's weather so vividly that he feels the sunlight she talks about. These acts begin to blur the boundaries between test and reality. He finds himself looking forward to her presence, not just as an observer evaluating a subject, but as a man who enjoys another human being's company. This is where the emotional turning point begins its quiet approach, when the person being tested stops feeling like a subject and starts feeling like someone he genuinely values. For the nanny, the turning point develops in a different way. She believes she is caring for a blind man, and with that belief comes a certain emotional investment. Caring for someone who is vulnerable demands patience and empathy, but it also creates a strange intimacy. She is in his personal space daily, helping him navigate his own home, guiding him through basic tasks, and, in her mind, protecting him from the dangers he cannot see. The work is not just physical but emotional, listening to him talk about his life before the accident, comforting him when he sighs at the loss of his independence, and gently encouraging him when he hesitates to try something new. In her reality, she is building trust with a man who has placed himself entirely in her hands. That trust feels real to her because it is unbroken. She does not know it is based on a lie. The emotional turning point sharpens when a moment occurs that neither could have planned. Perhaps the millionaire, accidentally, drops a family photograph while she is dusting nearby. She picks it up and begins describing it aloud, telling him who is in it, and then, without realizing she's revealing something deeply personal, she shares her own thoughts about family, about the people she's lost, or about how she has learned to cherish the small connections in life. Her voice might falter slightly, betraying her own vulnerability. In that instant, the millionaire feels a pang, not of guilt alone, but of recognition. She is not performing for money in this moment. She is being herself, opening a part of her life because she believes he is safe to share it with. That trust hits him harder than any other test he has staged. It's one thing to watch for signs of kindness in mundane actions, but it's another to receive a piece of someone's heart when they believe you cannot see the sincerity in their eyes. From this moment, his internal conflict grows sharper. He begins to realize that the longer he withholds the truth, the more painful the reveal will be. Every day she continues to believe in his blindness, she deepens her trust in him as a man who is honest about his vulnerabilities. This is the paradox of his experiment. The very trust he is trying to measure is the trust he is also betraying. The emotional turning point for him is the recognition that the outcome of the test will not simply confirm her character, it will irrevocably change their relationship, no matter what the result. When the reveal finally comes, it is not planned with the same meticulous care as the rest of the act. It happens in a moment charged with emotion, perhaps after she defends him against someone who makes an offhand remark about his condition, or after she goes out of her way to protect his dignity in a public setting. He sees her loyalty, her courage, and her compassion laid bare in a way that is undeniable. In the heat of that moment, his resolve to keep the act going crumbles. He blurts out her name, looks directly into her eyes, and thanks her, not as a blind man fumbling for words, but as a man who can see her clearly for the first time without the filter of his deception. The silence that follows is heavy, and it stretches long enough for both of them to feel the weight of what has just happened. Her reaction is the heart of the turning point. Shock floods her expression first, eyes widening, jaw tightening, perhaps her breath catching in her throat. Then comes the wave of realization as she replays every interaction in her mind, now seeing them through the lens of his deception. For her, this is not just about the fact that he can see, it's about the fact that every moment of trust, every act of care, and every vulnerable story she shared was given under false pretenses. The emotional wound is immediate and deep, because the bond she thought they had was built on a lie. Her instinct might be to pull away physically, to put distance between herself and the man she thought she knew, not out of cruelty but out of self-preservation. For the millionaire, watching her reaction is both the punishment and the proof of her character. If she had been caring for him purely out of obligation or for the sake of a paycheck, her reaction might be irritation at the inconvenience or even relief at not having to deal with his supposed blindness anymore. Instead, what he sees, what he truly sees, is hurt. Hurt means she cared. Hurt means she invested in him as a person, not as a bank account or a job title. That hurt is the ultimate confirmation of her humanity, but it comes at the cost of his own moral comfort. The conversation that follows is the most raw and unfiltered exchange of their relationship. He explains why he did it, his reasons for needing to know who he could trust, the years of being surrounded by people who only valued his money. He admits that he wanted to see if she would treat him with dignity when she thought there was nothing to gain. She listens, but her silence is not acceptance, it's the space where she processes the enormity of what has just happened. When she does speak, her words may cut him deeper than any betrayal he feared from her. She might tell him that trust is not something you test like a lab experiment, that by pretending to be blind, he did more than hide the truth, he manipulated her emotions and took advantage of her empathy. The emotional turning point is not just in the reveal, but in the aftermath, the shifting ground where both of them stand, unsure if the bridge between them can hold. For her, the decision to stay or leave is not about the paycheck, it's about whether she can rebuild trust with someone who intentionally broke it to satisfy his own doubts. For him, the moment is a reckoning with the fact that the test he created worked too well. It proved her kindness, but it also revealed the limits of forgiveness. In the days that follow, the air between them is thick with unspoken emotions. She still does her job, but the warmth is muted. He tries to explain further, offering honesty now in a way he never did before, but honesty after deception feels like a weaker currency. Yet, he notices small things that give him hope. She still makes his coffee in the morning, still ensures he's comfortable, still looks out for his needs even without the blind man act forcing her to. These lingering acts of care suggest that the emotional turning point has not entirely broken their bond, it has transformed it into something more fragile but also more real. This point in the story is the emotional core because it is where both characters confront the truth, not just about each other, but about themselves. He learns that testing someone's morality can reveal not only their virtues but also your own capacity to harm in the process. She learns that compassion does not shield you from betrayal, but it can shape the way you respond to it. And in this charged space between deception and truth, between care given and trust broken, the emotional turning point leaves them both changed in ways they could not have predicted when the act began.